The Aggies, the Jazz, the high schools. If it's the sport you care about, we're talking about it. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Eric Frandsen, Ajay, Salvesen. Thanks for joining us on a Friday. Memorial Day weekend is here. Ajay, do you have big plans for the weekend? You're going to climb a pole and get stuck up in the air?
Damn you, Greg. No plans at all.
No plans?
No plans.
For not climbing poles or just no plans in general?
Well, hey, by the way, before we get into everything else going on, happy birthday to my dad today. 61, I think. 61. So I'm going to go over and have a bottle of Heineken and sit down with him and have a conversation about the good old days and call it a night.
Okay, then.
Call an Uber and drive home.
It's probably a good sign. Good thing to do. It's getting weird.
What, you never... What? Some guy sits down and has a bottle of Heineken with his dad? That's weird?
Just conversations with you get weird. Big news today, passing of Jerry Sloan. Since Fox Sports, there at the top of the hour, chose not to talk about it, we will.
Yeah, that's just...
I mean, one of the greatest coaches in the NBA.
No, I get it. Fox Sports has an agenda, whether it's Doug Gottlieb being a moron and us having to put up with his crap on our station.
I mean, guys talked about it at different parts through the day, but...
Doug Gottlieb freaking...
It should be like...
Doug Gottlieb took the time to put Darren Williams in the middle of train tracks and run over him, though. Instead of just honoring Jerry Sloan, let's throw Darren Williams underneath the train and just run him over. And then he did it on Twitter, too, like, I don't know. It's some people we have on our station, I kind of wonder why. And I'm sure a lot of people, listeners, wonder why I'm on the station, too. But I'm better than Doug Gottlieb, let's be honest with each other. Hey, 435-494, about to get my number, 435-339-0321. Love to hear, and we're going to read them all. Love to hear your tributes about Jerry Sloan. 435-339-0321. We just see your number. You see your number. We don't see your name or anything, so it's anonymous. But we'd love to hear your tributes and your thoughts about the great coach Jerry Sloan. We will read every single one of them we can on air. I actually, when I heard about it, I was kind of like, holy crap, he passed away. And then I went home and I started crying. I honestly, I went home and sat on the couch and started crying for about 10 or so minutes. And then I turned on the computer and I was watching highlights, not of him as a coach, but of him as a player. Like, people forget he is one of the all-time greats in Chicago Bulls history.
It's true. Really scrappy,
defensively,
great defender,
incredible. He would have made Draymond Green cry.
Jerry Sloan began his coaching career in 1979, the 79-80 season in Chicago. Coached there for just a few years, 2.5 years, before being fired in 1982. Utah Jazz bring him on as an assistant coach. Frank Layden brought him on as an assistant coach. And eventually, Jerry Sloan takes over the reins in the 88-89 season for the Jazz and has tremendous success from that point forward. 1,221 wins as a head coach. The vast majority of those all coming on the sidelines of the Utah Jazz. One of the few guys ever to win more than 1,000 games with one team. Perennially winning his division. Perennially, a team was competitive and a force in the a very tough Western Conference. Went to the NBA Finals twice. Has been to several conference finals. Hall of Famer. Coached Hall of Famers. Players that left the Jazz, either retirement or trades or what have you. A lot of them remember fondly their time with Jerry Sloan. He wasn't a warm and friendly guy all the time. He was definitely cut from a different cloth, very old school cloth. This is the way you got to do it. I don't care who you are, what money you make, how long you've been on my roster. This is how it's done. And some people that rubbed him the wrong way, others that got the best out of him.
I think, and I'm going to turn back the clock again a little bit and just say it goes back to his playing days. Like when he played, it was no nonsense stuff. He got in your grill. I was watching some highlights. Like he gets in people's grill. He's physical with them. If there's a loose ball, I mean, even if it's 20 feet away, he's going to do whatever it takes to get their floor burns and everything else on his legs and arms to get to. So that's the way he played, watching those highlights, which means that's the way he's going to coach. And I think when you say, some took it, some didn't like the way he coached and some did, I think the latter generation is the ones who were pretty soft. That first generation of Stockton, Malone, Jeff Malone, Mark Eaton, Thurl Bailey, those guys were all about it. David Benoit, Shannon Anderson, Chris Morrison and him had some issues. Greg Foster is one of those guys, though. Greg Ostertag and him had some issues, but I think in the end, Greg kind of realized what Jerry Sloan meant to Greg. But we're talking about a guy, and this just mind boggles the absolute heck out of me, Eric. He never coached an All-Star game, and he never won NBA Coach of the Year. And by the way, the year after Stockton and Malone left,
well, and he was in line to coach an Olympic team too, and he never did that.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was after '96, right? Because Lenny Wilkins had coached him, and I think he was there. I think he was in line after that. He was part of the '96 Dream Team coaching staff. But that's whatever with that. Eric, the year after Stockton and Malone left, everybody said this team's going to be at the bottom of the Western Conference, scraping off the scum off the floor. They win 42 games and finish a game and a half outside of the 8th place in the Western Conference. 42-40, finished one game out, or a game and a half, whichever it was, and he doesn't win Coach of the Year. In 1997, he wasn't even the coach for the All-Star team, or 98, and I think they had the best record in the Western Conference. Unreal. I swear David Stern had something against him.
Well, right, how he managed the team after Stockton and Malone retired. Well, Malone left to Los Angeles and then retired. And then it was a whole new cast of characters. Andre Karolinko was kind of that transition player. And then Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer, those guys, Mehmet Okur, they started to come along, got the team into the Western Conference Finals once again. It was a force in the West for a couple more seasons. And then age and new attitudes and players who would fight back, didn't want to take what he was given. He says, you know what, I'm done. Unprecedented, just resigning middle of the season. It was a sad way to see him finish his coaching career.
Yeah, it was tough, but I still... So when I used to help out with Salt Lake City Stars games for the radio, Phil Johnson and I were talking about it, and we didn't talk about that specific incident. We just talked about leaving the game, and Phil said he felt ready to go too. Like him and Jerry talked, and they both kind of said, it's time to move on. And Phil said he doesn't regret it. He didn't miss it. I remember and it was the first time I actually met Sloan too, because we were in this VIP room, and Phil and I were going in to get a drink, and Jerry's in there, and Jerry has his boot on his foot. It's one of my favorite stories. And, I shake Coach's hand, said, how you doing, whatever. And we're chatting for a little bit, and I noticed the boot, and I said, hey, Coach, by the way, what's the boot on your foot for? And he says, kicking Phil Johnson's ass too many times. And Phil's like, yeah, that sounds about right. And then Phil goes, I saved him a lot of times after he get ejected, though, because he didn't want to sit there and watch the ball game. He wanted to go inside the locker room and have a beer. Their sense of humor with each other was incredible. And I think because everybody kind of knows the story that when Sloan said he was done, the management immediately went to Phil Johnson, and Phil said, if Sloan's not here, I'm not here. And they said, look, well, what can we financially, what can we do? What can we do here? Hey, we're going to get rid of Darren Williams. And he's like, no, if Sloan's not here, I'm not here either.
Yeah, that friendship and relationship ran really deep.
Yeah.
9315 texts in, how do you get a ton of coaches of the month but never get coach of the year?
9315.
Amen.
I'm with you.
It's one of the great mysteries.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. That does not make any sense to me for how good of a coach he was, and the record. I mean, I can't tell you, maybe count on one hand from 1990 to we'll say to 2000, how many times he finished fourth or lower in the Western Conference. And not one time did he get that award.
Let's see. I've got it posted.
Oh,
I've got his career record right here.
Okay.
So, starting in 1988-89 season, first time he was a head coach for the Utah Jazz. First in the Midwest. These are division ranks.
Okay? Oh, okay, yeah.
Number 1 in the Midwest. Number 2 in the Midwest. Number 2 in the Midwest. First in the Midwest. Third in the Midwest. This was 92-93.
Okay.
Third in the Midwest, 93-94. Then, from there, it's either first or second, all the way until 2000-2001 season when they were third. Fourth, seventh, that's the year they missed the playoffs. Fifth, and second in that period where they missed the playoffs in 3 straight years. Then they jumped up to first in the Northwest, third, and first in the Northwest again in 2009-2010. The season before he resigned.
Hey, okay, so they missed the playoffs. What years did they miss the playoffs, Eric?
2003-2004 season through the 05-06.
Okay.
So those 3 straight seasons.
Did they still have winning records?
Let's see. The first year he was 42-40. The next year 26-56.
Oh.
Then 41-41.
So only 1 year did he finish under 500.
Yeah, really, the entire time he was with the Utah Jazz, he only had 1 losing season. 1.
1,223 wins, playoffs and regular season combined. That's just incredible. You know what the best thing about Sloan was? And I was watching some more highlights on him. When he nearly get in fights with players.
Oh, those were great.
Where him and I think it was Byron Russell and Rashid that went at it, and almost and Rashid flung Russell into the bench, and Sloan just lost it, just came unglued and went right after Rashid. I mean, and this, by the way, this is Rashid in 2000. This is gang member type Rashid Wallace, who you didn't want to even sniff. And, dude, he went right up nose. And, in fact, if it wasn't for the ref, and I think Gordy Chiesa was right there and grabbed Sloan, and if they wouldn't have, Sloan wouldn't even have hesitated. He would have went fist and fist with the guy.
Didn't he have an altercation with Kenyon Martin?
Yeah. So that
and he was looking at him, he had this grin on his face, like, you want to go?
Oh,
Let's go. You want to fight?
And dude, that's another guy
he was ready.
You don't want to touch him. And that's the thing is, Kenny Martin knocked Malone into the basketball standard, and he was hurt. And Sloan comes just barging out there, and Kenny Martin kind of just turns around and goes, and then you see Sloan mouth a couple of words that we can't say on air, right. And Kenyon's grin just goes away. Kenyon's like, oh my gosh.
This dude's serious.
Yeah, this guy could really go.
This old man can tear my head off.
And Jerry Sloan's following Kenyon Martin down down the court, and who was it? Was it Ostertag? And somebody else was in front of Sloan. And Ostertag one time after that said, "Oh, I wasn't protecting I wasn't protecting Sloan. I was protecting Kenyon Martin." And then there was the one he had an incident with Mark Cuban, and at the press conference, Jerry Sloan says, "I thought that was a fan. I had no idea that was cute. I thought it's a fan in the stands." That's what he called him.
That is funny.
And then of course I think it was the same time that Jerry Stackhouse incident where Jerry and Sloan went at it, and Jerry, is older at this point, and dude, he wanted to go so badly, and the ref knew it too, and so refs are like, all right, and ref wouldn't throw Sloan out, obviously, but gave a tech to Jerry Stackhouse, and Stackhouse was like, what did I do? And dude, Sloan was the toughest SOB in the league. Like, you never ever messed with Sloan. And even players, I think, realized when even, I think John Starks once said it. Think about that. John Starks actually played for the Jazz for a little bit. But he even said, when I got there, I realized things were different in a good way when you played for Jerry Sloan. It's pretty cool, man, the respect that he earned and he got from so many.
There's some great quotes on his Wikipedia page. Quotes that are attributed to Jerry Sloan.
No way. Shoot me with this. I got to hear these.
Here's one. After Stockton injured his finger during a game, Jerry was asked what finger Stockton injured. Jerry replied, the one on his hand. A great one about this at the time. He was a second-year player, C.J. Miles.
Oh, geez, C.J.
The 06-07 season. I don't care if he's 19 or 30. If he's going to be on the floor in the NBA, he's got to be able to step up and get after it. We can't put diapers on him one night and a jock strap the next night. It's just the way it is.
Give me another one. Give me one more.
But this is the only other one on here. So it says, these guys have been criticized the last few years for not getting to where we're going, but I've always said that the most important thing in sports is to keep trying. Let this be an example of what it means to say it's never over. And he said this in reference to that Stockton shot in the Western Conference Finals over the Houston Rockets.
Okay. Yeah, he's had some memorable ones. I think you and I both heard a few of them. My favorite one it was from The Last Dance, but when Jordan scored the 38, and with the flu and on, he goes, I didn't know he was sick. He's a good ball player. No one told me he was sick. You couldn't even tell. You could just tell he was more miffed and humored by the situation than anything. And then his first win of his head coaching career, he goes, well, look, if you want to go 82-0, you got to win the first one. We still have a shot to go 82-0. And looked at him, didn't even grin or anything, just goes, and we still have a shot to go 82-0. And the reporter's like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Kind of realized where his place was. I was reading, and there's been so many great stories on social media about him. There was the one where the bus driver, I think they were on the road. They got back to the hotel around midnight. So the bus driver had to drive home and then be back at the hotel at 6 a.m. just to pick the team up. So Jerry Sloan said, why don't you sleep on my couch in the hotel room? You crash there for the night. You'll be ready to go. So you have to drive home. Get plenty of sleep. Stuff like that. So we don't hear those stories, right? We never hear those stories of Jerry Sloan. Usually hear the quotes, the tough-minded attitude, the tough mentality of him. But there was a soft side to him, and after Bobby Sloan passed away, I think you kind of saw that guard come down just a little bit.
He softened up.
Yeah, I think Bobby Sloan did a lot for him, but when she passed, he started to kind of feel the effects of losing her. And Tammy, by the way, if I know you probably never met her, but she is the sweetest, most angelic woman you could possibly ever meet. Just a wonderful, incredible human being, and was so really, really, really protective of Jerry, rightfully so. And would always be patient and kind of like when somebody would want an autograph or whatever, just so loving and kind and taking care of Jerry to make sure she was all right. So my thoughts and condolences out to her, because this has got to be really tough.
Great article on ESPN. They've kind of tabulated a lot of the different sentiments that's been shared on social media and other places.
That's awesome.
People reaching out and reflecting on the person and coach that Jerry Sloan was. I've tweeted out the link on Twitter. I'm at Frandsen. Go check that out. It's NBA stars and Utah Jazz legends react to death of Jerry Sloan. Boy, he was hit with a double whammy with his health.
Yeah,
with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. Those are two tough things to come out of. I'm glad that Darren Williams was able to reconcile with Jerry.
Awesome.
While Jerry still had some wits about him.
He knew.
And that's going to go down as one of my favorite stories.
The article was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah. All right, one of our favorite people to talk to is Craig Smith, because once you turn him on, he's hard to turn off. And we could have kept going, but we ran out of time. We had a chance to catch up with him earlier today. USU men's basketball coach Craig Smith has some new additions to his basketball roster. We'll get his thoughts on them. Abel Porter thought he was done with basketball, but he's going to be playing somewhere else. What did he think about that? And just what things are going on right now for USU basketball and what the future may hold for the Aggies. That's coming up next here on the Full Court Press.
The Aggies, the Jazz, the high schools, the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
Utah State men's basketball program announced a couple of new signees just the other day, and we get a chance to talk to their head coach, Craig Smith, about who these guys are, how that all happened, and definitely an international flair going on with Utah State men's basketball. Coach Smith, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Hey, Coach.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for having me on. It's been a while, so I'm excited to be back on this show on this beautiful day, although it's one of those rare days where the sun's not out. And so, but I'm happy to be on, and thanks for the time.
So, first of all, I mean, one day after another, we hear of two international players, one from Poland, one from Ukraine. I just want to know who got that recruiting trip. Did anybody go out and get on a flight to go to Europe, or are you just doing this strictly off of tape?
Well, we've been recruiting both these guys for quite some time, and recruiting is always, you wish you could write a book on recruiting, and you probably can, but you just never know how it's all going to work out, right? And we've been recruiting, quite frankly, worldwide for ever since we've been at Utah State, and we really started it kind of the end of our tenure at South Dakota. And so these are a couple young men that we're super excited about. Obviously, the NCAA has said we can't be on the road recruiting. Once we were actually getting ready to go on a flight so Thursday was the day the NCAA tournament got canceled. We were about to have a practice, and then Eric Peterson and I were going to go on a flight to go see Raleigh Worcester playing his state tournament game, his state semifinal game. And then word came in that, nope, NCAA is canceling in-person recruiting. So we had to get out of that flight, so on and so forth. But I actually flew to see the big fella, Shimon, last September sometime, and got a chance to meet him and talk to him and kind of do that whole thing. And so we had, that was right before practice was starting, and it's always nice, and you can't do it. In an ideal world, you always want to spend face time with the prospect, with, if you can, their family, and just to get to know them on a different level. They get to know you on a different level, and I think you build trust with each other from that respect. And it's like anything. Like, we can sit on the phone all day and talk, and people are going to form an impression. But when you can get face-to-face with somebody, sometimes that has a whole nother feel. Sometimes it feels exactly the same. But I think you get a better gauge. Like, is that guy a genuine person? Is he a real person, or is he full of you-know-what? And I think that's the beauty of in-person recruiting. Obviously, and I know I'm taking this a step further, but as of right now, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to go watch kids play AAU tournaments, which really, you can watch games from 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. And so you just can mass evaluate, and you just see so many more kids. But at the same time, in some ways, it might be better to do it the way we're doing it now, because you just dig into the game film, right? And you just watch them play with their high school team or their AAU team and kind of get a different perspective that way. So anyway, it's kind of crazy how it all just worked out, where we ended up getting 2 commitments on back-to-back days, and it felt like we hadn't had a commitment for an eternity. So we were super excited about both these young men. I love our freshman class. And, when it comes to recruiting, I know this is a long answer, but you're always trying to blend building the best team that you can for next year, while at the same time building your team 2 years from now and 3 years from now and 4 years from now, and you can't be short-sighted. And so many people nowadays just live in the now, and it's always about next year, and it is about next year. Like, I think these guys can contribute, or we wouldn't have taken them at this point. But at the same time, you got to keep building for 3 years from now and keep the big picture in mind. So I really like our roster. We're going to have some inexperience, but we certainly have a lot of guys, a team full of guys that I really believe in.
Well, Coach, let's talk about one of your new signees. It's a big one, metaphorically and literally, 6'11" at 220. Now, how do you pronounce his name? Is it Simon Sapala? How bad have we been butchering it?
Shimon. Okay. And maybe I'm screwing it up,
Holy cow, wasn't even close.
And how about his last name?
Oh,
man, you got me. You got me.
But tell us about this kid. I mean, obviously, the last time you went and recruited a foreign kid internationally, and he came to Utah State, turned out to be a diamond in the rough and a gem in Namias Keta. Tell us about Shimon.
Well, he's a very good player and an unbelievable person, and both. And the dude is a brainy. Like, he's super intelligent, and he's just a very humble, well thought out young man. Every time you talk to the guy, he's got unbelievable questions, and I'm just like, man, I can tell I got an ACT on my test score compared to this dude, but and I took it twice to get that 18. But I'm kind of kidding. But he's a great person. He's going to thrive here. Comes from a smaller community in Poland, great family, and for a long time it was Stanford and us. And then, of course, late in the year, especially with big guys, teams are scrambling, and all of a sudden, all these other Minnesota, Wake Forest, Maryland, all these other schools start pouring in trying to get him. But he's a person that really is about relationships and trust, and which we love, and you got to have that. But on the floor, he's like an aircraft carrier. Like he is. I mean, he's 6'11". He told me the other day what he weighed in kilograms or whatever it is, and I pulled out the calculator while I was on the phone, and or not the calculator. I punched it in online on my phone, and it translated out to about 240. So, and he's big. Like, seeing him in person, he's a legitimate 6'11", and his shoulders are super broad, but he's got great feet, great hands. He's physical, and he's got great feel. Like, he just really understands the game and knows how to play, and he's got a high motor. Like, he's always moving. Like, he just understands spacing the floor. So if a guy is driving the ball at a certain angle, he understands how to find the window to find an opening, and then he's a really good finisher around the basket. So he's developing a three-point game as well. I mean, he's not where he needs to be that way, but certainly he shot it at a decent percentage last year. So he's got great experience playing internationally and playing for his country, Poland, and he's been very well coached. So there's a lot of exciting things. He's not, he's got a lot of work to do at the same time to get to develop his overall potential. But he's, I can't wait to get rolling to coaching this guy.
And then Max Shulga from Ukraine. Both of these guys participated in the under-18 FIBA European Championships. This is a guard from Ukraine. Looks like he's got a pretty good shot and led a lot of different categories when he participated in that FIBA World Championship.
Yeah, Max is I think he's a really I love his game. I think he's just so versatile. He's an excellent shooter. Like, you see the stats, and that's what really, when you watch him play, it just really pops that this guy loves basketball. And he just, you talk to him and like, what are your hobbies? And of course, kids don't even know what the word hobbies means anymore. Like, but it's, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? He goes, Coach, honestly, all I like to do is play basketball. Like, I love to play basketball. And so that's a great trait, but you can feel that when you watch him play. But he's an elite shooter. He's one of those guys that when he misses a shot, you're almost surprised. Like, he can really, really shoot it, and every time he misses, it's right on. Like, he doesn't miss left or right. I think he's got really good feel. He's a very good passer, and but he's just kind of a jack of all trades. Like, he's an excellent rebounder. He's tough-nosed. He just understands the game. And so I think he brings us a lot of versatility. You know, he's 6'3" or 6'4", about 190, and he's 17. Like, if he was in the States, he would be going into his senior year of high school. So he's a young kid. And so he can, I think we can put him in a lot of different scenarios. And he's one of those guys that can play with like anybody on the floor and really thrive. So I'm not going to say he's Diogo Brito. Their game is different, but at the same time, he does have some of those traits. You know how Diogo, like you look at a box score after some of the games, and he's got 14 points, and he's got 4 assists and 8 rebounds and 3 steals, and Max is kind of like that as well. He has great anticipation on the defensive end, gets his hands on a ton of balls. And I don't remember what he averaged with steals, but it was a pretty high number. And so he kind of does a lot of things. And so when you really look at our roster, we still have 1 scholarship available. Nigel John decommitted in early, I think it was May 7th or something like that, right around that date. And that's a whole nother subject. No ill will to either party, but that's how it goes sometimes. So if he doesn't want to be here, then we wish him the best. And so, but when you look at our roster, I'm really excited. We still have 1 scholarship available, and we'll just have to determine if we decide to use that or not.
Coach, once again, you guys are pretty deep. Can you just talk about the excitement not only you have with your freshman class, but I know during press conferences last year, you just be so hyped and excited about Liam McChesney and Marco Anthony. Can you talk about some of these younger guys who are going to get some minutes this year?
I'm really excited about our roster. I mean, obviously, that senior class, losing, Sam Merrill is he's a once-in-a-generation type of guy. Obviously, his folklore and legendary status and everything that he brought to the table, not only with his talent, but his leadership and those sorts of things. That's going to be a big loss. We all know that. And Abel really was a steady Eddie guy, and Diogo was just a fierce competitor. And so those guys were a big part of a lot of, 54 wins and 15 losses over the last 2 years and 2 Mountain West tournament championships and 2 NCAA tournament berths. So you don't just, this guy's this and this guy's that. Like, you got to go prove it, right? And chemistry every year is a big, big deal, and synergy and all that stuff. Now, that being said, look at our roster, and we got a lot of talent, and it's, I would say, the deepest roster we've had in our 3 years. But, everyone right now thinks they're going to play 35 minutes a night, and that's just not possible. So, we're going to see who develops and does those types of things. But, Marco Anthony's a transfer from Virginia, played behind, 3 NBA guys as his sophomore year, so he's gone against great competition. He's got a chance to be very, very good. He's 6'5", and depending on the day, 225 to 230 pounds, and he can play 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, he can play any position on the floor except for center, and just brings a lot of versatility. He's an excellent defensive player, and he can really he can score. And so we need him to be a playmaker for us. So he sat out last year. I thought Sean Bairstow really came on late in the year. Like, we don't beat New Mexico in the first round of the conference tournament without him. I just watched that game the other day, and he had a phenomenal second half, even though he didn't he might have scored 2 points, but he made a great play at the end of the game when Diogo made that 3, and he drove it late in the clock, and they helped up, jump stop off 2 feet, hits Bean for a layup. I think Sean's the guy that needs to take the next step, and he will take the next step. He's extremely motivated. He broke his arm in the championship game, and just talked to him the other day. That's all good. So we're excited about that. Liam McChesney, 6'9", 6'10", kind of plays like Kevin Durant. I'm not saying he is Kevin Durant, but he has that kind of game to him, really smooth and slinky and unbelievable feet, moves really well. He's up to 204 pounds now. I think when he got here, he was about 180, 175, 180. So he's starting to really gain weight that way. He didn't turn 18 until I believe September 28th is his birthday, so he was very young when he got here as well. But he's got to go prove it. He's got a lot of talent, but he's got to be able to go prove it. And so obviously he'll be a freshman, a redshirt freshman. Stephen Ashworth is coming in. The previous staff signed him, and we love him. He's a gamer, really knows how to play. He just got back from his mission in Indiana, and he can kind of do it all. Yet in the second half against Montverde, and I forget what the tournament, it was a big national tournament late in the year for Lone Peak High School. He scored 26 points in the second half. So he just has a knack for putting the ball in the hole, and that dude loves to play. Raleigh Worcester is Mr. Basketball in Montana. Team won the state championship. He's 6'3", 205 pounds, and he really knows how to play. So we're super excited about those guys. We'll be young and inexperienced in the backcourt especially. Our front court will be has a chance to be very, very good. So we got to put it all together. Brock Miller, as we know, is coming back, and he needs to have a great year for us, and I know he's really excited. He's been working very, very hard. So I'm sure I missed some guys, but I wanted to kind of touch those young guys. So Matthew Wickheiser is going to walk on for us. He just got back from Italy, serving his mission, and Matthew's 6'10", and very, very skilled. And so I think he's got a very bright future, and I think down the road he's going to be a guy that's going to help our program. So we're super excited about next year, and we're super excited for the future of Aggie basketball.
Again, we're talking to Craig Smith. He's the head coach of the Utah State men's basketball team, and you'd mentioned Abel Porter, the impact that he'd had on Utah State, and we were led to believe that he was done with basketball, and then we learned that he's still got more in him, and he's going to go to Ohio State. What was that process like to hear that he was still going to play, but he's going somewhere else? And if he had one more year, would you have rather he stuck it out and have one more year with you?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. Abel was very upfront early in the season that he was going to, treat this year like his senior year. And if something would happen, at a high academic school or a situation like that, that he would probably strongly entertain that option. And so, or he's just going to be done. Sam and him are best friends. Abel obviously he served a 2-year mission, redshirted, got married about a year ago. Their family's expecting a child, him and his wife Presley. And so, but, we met various times like, hey, are you sure this is going to, this will be your last year at Utah State? Yes, coach, I'm going to move on. And so we just always had, and obviously we honored him on senior night. And so season gets over, and he had an potential opportunity with another really prestigious academic school. And I just, and he asked about it, and I said, hey, if that's what you want to do, like, let's get you in the portal and you can explore your options. So, we knew the whole time that he wasn't going to be back here, and I appreciate him just being up front, the whole time that he, he's already graduated college in got his undergrad in 3 years, has 1 master's degree that'll be completed here in about, 3 weeks. So, I mean, he's earned 2 degrees at Utah State. Utah State's got a great place in his heart. And so he was always very upfront that this is going to be his last year here. And obviously this was an opportunity that he felt like he had to do. So I know maybe it rubs some people the wrong way or what have you, but at the same time, he was always upfront in terms of, that he wasn't going to come back. And I have that guy's done a lot of great things for us and for our program. And so we're happy for Abel, and we're excited for the next guy that has the opportunity to represent Utah State.
Coach, I know the season's still a little ways away, but with COVID-19 doing as much damage as it has to schedules and timing of whatever, I know you guys are hoping to go to Myrtle Beach. Is that still in play to still happen?
Yeah, to our understanding, all of our schedule, there's no issues. We are pretty much done with our scheduling. We're not going to have the issues that we had last year.
That's great.
Last year I think we were looking for D1 games in middle of September, and I think there's a few few reasons for that. One, they saw Sam Merrill and Cada and the Castor crew coming back. But two, we played, if you remember, we played 2 conference games in December. And our conference tournament was a week earlier, which ended up being a great thing. But, if you look at our non-conference schedule last year, we were just playing nonstop. And we hardly had any practice time. And playing those 2 league games in that week really eliminated some opportunities to play other games. So this year, I don't want to say it was easier, but in some ways it was. It was still very, very difficult getting – it was easier to get games, but it was still very difficult to get, the LSUs, the BCS schools, right, the LSUs, the Floridas, those games were incredibly difficult to get again. But obviously we're playing BYU at home. I think it's December 5th. We got St. Mary's at home, I believe, December 12th. And so those are 2 high-quality home games that our fans, I think, will love and should be an electric environment in the Spectrum. But as of right now, nothing has been canceled. I think, we're not playing like last year we played in Jamaica. I think those types of things are probably a little more likely to maybe be like, okay, are we going to play or not? Obviously, the California schools, the Cal State system, I think, had announced maybe a week ago or 10 days ago that they're not going to have students on campus. That still hasn't affected the UC schools, and we do play one of those schools at our place. So when that was announced, we called them right away, and nothing like that has been canceled or postponed due to the COVID-19.
Hey, Jerry Sloan just passed away late last night. He's a Midwest guy. You're a Midwest guy. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that.
Well, thanks for saying that. I was going to bring that up. He's, as a young coach, you always, and obviously you see The Last Dance and the last 2 series with the Jazz. And he's just always one of those guys that, our thoughts and prayers are with his family. But he's just such a legendary figure, certainly in the state of Utah. He's one of 2 guys that's won over 1,000 games with one NBA team. And he was just, to me, as a young guy growing up, he was just always a guy you looked up to, even though I had no relationship, didn't know him, didn't know anybody that knew him. But, you always respected him. It was easy to see his tenacity and courage and conviction and competitiveness, but it was equally more impressive as a young coach. It was like, man, these dudes love this guy. And he wasn't one of those guys, my perspective, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but this is just my perspective. He was just one of those guys that wasn't afraid to hold people accountable for whatever actions, good or bad. And yet he had a dry, had this dry kind of wit, sense of humor. And, but it always appeared that the guys that he coached loved to play for him. They gave it everything they had on a nightly basis. And I think that's one of the things with the Jazz when he coached them is you knew, you got to show up to play to beat them because they're not going to beat themselves, right? They're not going to be lazy. And maybe every now and then you're going to have a bad night. Maybe you don't shoot it well, maybe whatever. But they didn't ever seem to make excuses. And so, when I got hired here 2 years ago, certainly you always talked about Utah State, but this state loves basketball. They're very knowledgeable about basketball and very passionate about basketball. And I think that those, Jerry Sloan teams that epitomize the state and what they believe in. And that's one thing we tried to tell our guys when we got here. We don't know if we're going to win or lose. We don't know that. But we know how knowledgeable our fans are, how passionate they are, and whether it's the Utah State fans or the whole state. And they're always going to respect you if you play hard and you play the game with an edge, being a tough-nosed guy, taking charges, first on the floor, and they're going to respect you when you share the ball and move the ball and play as a team. And if you do those kind of things, they're going to show up in masses. And obviously they want you to win, but they'll show up if you play the game a certain way. And I think Jerry Sloan's teams really epitomized that certainly in this state, and carried that throughout the country and throughout the NBA. So certainly a tough day and a sad day in a lot of respects for the basketball community and in the great state of Utah.
Coach, great answer, great response. Certainly we're all great memories from a lot of us around here about Jerry Sloan and his impact on the state and how he treated basketball and life, really. So appreciate that and appreciate what's going on with Utah State men's basketball. It's a curious time that we find ourselves in, how it affects recruiting and scheduling, but we continue to keep an eye on how you're handling it, and we look forward to when we can see basketball on the hardwood again.
Man, I can't wait. I actually, just staying in touch with some of our guys. I talked to Justin Bean and Nimi yesterday and Marco today, and those guys are all chomping at the bit. I can't wait to get back here and start working out and, being together as a team. It's hard to believe it's been 9 or 10 weeks since we all worked together last. And, we told the team the NCAA tournament wasn't happening, which they had already known. We gave our hugs, and literally 2 days later, Sean Bairstow's flying back to Australia, and Alfonso's going back to Seattle, and because that was the recommendation from the school, just like it was from most schools, and seems like an eternity to go, but our guys are fired up. You got to make the most out of everything. Everybody's dealing with it, and so we can't wait to get back together and get back on that Spectrum floor and represent our fantastic school the right way. So can't come soon enough, but at the same time, we're going to work hard to get better, and this is a time that players are made, and so our guys are very, very determined, and I know we feel like we have something to prove next year, so we can't wait.
All right, thanks, Coach.
I appreciate you, Coach.
Hey, thanks a lot, fellas. Have a great weekend.
Talking the sports you care about. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Eric Frandsen, Ajay Salvesen. Really appreciate Coach Craig Smith coming on and joining us.
Yeah, he was about to head up into the mountains, too, so we would have had no service at all.
No. So, yes,
that's awesome. Good stuff.
We spoke with him a little bit earlier in the day, but we appreciate the time that he set aside for us.
Eric, it's on our podcast. We've just posted it, so it's ready to go on 106onthefan.com, or Stitcher, iTunes, and Spotify have it as well for us.
Awesome. So you can go listen to it again. He had some really interesting things to say, Jerry Sloan, international recruiting.
I'm glad you asked about Abel Porter. I'm glad you asked about that.
That was an interesting answer.
Because there has been speculation sitting on both sides of the fence of exactly where the feelings were, what happened, and to hear it from the horse's mouth is a great thing.
And as he said, they've got one more scholarship available. We didn't really get a chance to get into that too much. Like, do they use it for a current walk-on?
Yeah, that's not what you said.
Do they go after a... Well, this is our conversation off the air.
Yeah.
Do we go out and find the next best available player? Do you go a position need? And he's like, all of the above.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, ask him about, we got that. We asked him off the air about the 20-game schedule. We'll keep the conversation mostly private, but there's pros and cons to it, according to Coach Smith.
Yeah, Mountain West saying they're going to do a 20-game schedule.
Can we get next year or 2 years?
I think it's in 2.
Is it 2 years? Okay.
So
you got a couple years left.
But it sounds like much of the schedule for this upcoming year is
done.
Still going forward. There was some speculation things might change because of whatnot.
Hope so, because that helps the RPI.
Yes. Anyways, I hope you have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe.
No show Monday.
We will not be on the air on Monday, but we'll be back on with you on Tuesday, recapping the things that were and more of the tributes and recognitions for Jerry Sloan after he passed away. Great man, great coach. Have a great weekend, everybody.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. If I told you a year ago you would spend your Memorial Day watching Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning take on Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady in golf, you probably wouldn't have believed it. Tiger and Phil would have been in season. And until this offseason, Brady didn't really do things like that. But the pandemic has changed a lot. We've seen plenty of NFL players play in Pro-Ams in the past, Tony Romo, John Smoltz. But having two of the greatest paired with Tiger and Phil is quite unique. That's 4 of the more competitive people you'll ever see. Each one of them probably remembers every bad swing or bad throw they've made, every loss that they've had, and they can tell you exactly what they did wrong. It will be interesting to see how much insight they give us into their approaches to the game and who will be the biggest trash talker out there. It's not the golf experience that we expected, but it's a nice little extra in a sports season that is missing so very much. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.